They made 10 movies together. But behind the scenes, Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon hated each other's guts. Matthau called Lemmon a stuck-up pretty boy, while Lemmon said working with Matthau was pure hell. Their fake friendship fooled America for decades, but now we know they were hiding dark secrets, nasty fights, and a rivalry so bitter it followed them to their graves. Walter Matthau grew up in one of the toughest neighborhoods in New York City, the Lower East Side. Life there was hard, and survival meant struggle every single day. He was born on October 1st, 1920, to immigrant parents. His father, Milos, came from Ukraine, and his mother, Rose, came from Lithuania. But when Walter was just 3 years old, his father walked out, leaving Rose alone with 2 young boys to care for. She worked long hours in clothing factories, barely earning enough to feed them. They moved from one tiny, cold apartment to another, often just to avoid paying rent they couldn't afford. Things got even worse when the Great Depression hit. Money was tight everywhere, and for Walter's family, it became nearly impossible to get by. Even as a child, Walter did what he could to help. He went to school, but he also started picking up odd jobs to bring in extra money. He became street smart fast. He even turned to gambling at a young age, setting up games to win a few dollars. That habit, once a way to help his family, would stick with him for life. Despite the chaos at home, he stayed in school, attending public school 25, junior high school 64, and later Seward Park High. But Walter didn't just survive. He found something that gave him a sense of purpose. He stepped on stage for the first time when he was just 4 years old. It was a small role, but it lit a spark in him. By age 11, he had a job selling snacks in Yiddish theaters on 2nd Avenue. These theaters were full of energy and tradition, drawing in crowds of immigrants who missed the old country. Walter didn't just sell candy. He listened. He taught himself Yiddish to understand the shows, and he watched actors closely. Some of the best performers of the time were on those stages, and Walter soaked up everything they did. Soon, he was asking for small parts in the productions. He got them, first for a few cents more, and then for real stage time. In 1936, when he was 16, he landed a part in a long musical comedy called The Dishwasher. He loved every minute of it. At the same time, he was reading Shakespeare and memorizing lines. He admired Mozart's music. He wasn't just watching the world, he was studying it, feeling it, preparing for something bigger. Then the world changed. After the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, the United States entered World War II, and Walter joined the Army Air Corps. In 1942, he left New York and became a radio man gunner on a bomber plane. He was part of the 453rd Bombardment Group, flying dangerous missions over Europe. It was brutal work. His unit saw intense combat during the Battle of the Bulge and many other major operations. Flying in those planes was terrifying, and many never came back. Walter earned 6 battle stars before the war ended. Those years left a mark on him and gave him a deeper sense of the world's pain and humor. When he came home in 1945, he was determined to chase the dream that had started back in the Yiddish theaters. Thanks to the GI Bill, he was able to afford drama school. He studied at the New School for Social Research with a famous German director named Erwin Piscator. That training shaped his style. It helped him dig deeper into roles, to act with real emotion, not just memorized lines. As his acting career slowly started to take shape, his personal life was moving forward too. In the years after the war, he surrounded himself with fellow actors, people like Rod Steiger, Harry Belafonte, and B. Arthur. It was in that creative world that he met Grace Geraldine Johnson. In 1948, he married her, and together they had 2 children, David and Jenny. But life was still uncertain. Walter struggled on Broadway, performing in show after show that failed. Between 1950 and 1954, he was in 12 plays that didn't last. The pressure of chasing a career while raising a family took its toll, and the marriage ended in 1959 after 11 years. Walter Matthau's journey to Broadway success wasn't smooth or fast. In 1961, things weren't looking great for him. He had just acted in a flop called Once There Was a Russian, and his career seemed stuck. Then came a turning point. He was cast in A Shot in the Dark, which opened at the Booth Theater in New York. The play, based on a French script, had some big names in the cast, including Julie Harris and a young William Shatner. At first, critics weren't too excited, but word spread and the show became a hit, running for over a year. Matthau played a detective in a way that was both funny and deeply human, a style that became his signature. That performance earned him his first Tony Award and proved he wasn't just a background actor, he was someone to watch. Oddly enough, when the play was turned into a movie, Matthau was in it too, but played a totally different part. Around this time, things were good at home as well. He and his wife Carol were happy, and they were expecting their first child. Matthau was 41 when all this happened, which showed just how long he'd been waiting for his big break. Just a few years later, in 1964, Matthau got the role that would forever shape how people saw him. He became Oscar Madison in The Odd Couple, a sloppy, grumpy sports writer who couldn't be more different from his neat freak roommate, played by Art Carney. The show was written by Neil Simon and directed by Mike Nichols, and it was an instant smash. Matthau's messy charm lit up the stage, and audiences loved him so much that he won his second Tony Award. People said he didn't seem like he was acting at all. He just was Oscar Madison. The play became so popular that tickets were being resold for sky-high prices. One scene in particular, where Oscar makes a sandwich, yells at his poker buddies, and takes a phone call all at once, became legendary. The role turned Matthau into a true leading man. Interestingly, he almost didn't take the part because he was afraid of being typecast, but his wife talked him into it, saying it was perfect for him. She was right. Matthau's transition to movie stardom came not long after, thanks to The Fortune Cookie in 1966. Directed by Billy Wilder, the film paired Matthau with Jack Lemmon for the first time. Matthau played a shady lawyer named Whiplash Willie, and he was so good that he won an Academy Award. But making the movie nearly killed him. Just over halfway through filming, he had a heart attack and needed emergency surgery. The production was paused for 2 months, and the studio wanted to replace him, but Wilder refused. He said there would be no movie without Matthau. When Matthau returned to set, he was still in pain, but he powered through and finished the film. That role changed everything. Wilder later said that after The Fortune Cookie, Matthau became a whole new kind of star. Jack Lemmon had actually pushed for him to get the role, even though the studio wanted someone more famous like Frank Sinatra. When Matthau accepted the Oscar, he joked, "I'd like to thank everyone who helped me get this award, except Jack Lemmon, who stole most of my scenes." Critics loved his performance. Pauline Kael wrote that he was so cynical, it somehow came across as optimistic. The movie made money, but more importantly, it made Matthau a Hollywood heavyweight. During these same years, Matthau's personal life was also full of highs and lows. In 1959, he married Carol Grace after a long affair that began during a play they worked on together. Carol had a complicated past, including 2 failed marriages to writer William Saroyan and stories of abuse. But with Matthau, she said she found something different, someone passionate and kind. They had a son named Charles in 1962 and named him after Carol's stepfather, a powerful man in the aviation industry. The baby even had famous godparents, actor Richard Widmark and journalist Lillian Ross. But not everything was rosy. Matthau had a serious gambling problem, and by the mid-60s, he had racked up over $350,000 in debt. That would be over $3 million today. Carol stuck by him, saying she wouldn't let money ruin their marriage. She once joked that other wives would scream about a gambling habit like his, but she didn't care, because what mattered most to her was love. While Matthau was making his mark on stage and screen, Jack Lemmon's story had already started in dramatic fashion. Literally in an elevator. He was born in 1925 in Massachusetts and didn't even make it to the delivery room before entering the world. His father worked for the Donut Corporation of America, so Lemmon grew up in comfort. But his early years were tough in other ways. He spent 2 full years in hospitals before the age of 12, mostly due to serious ear problems. He had multiple surgeries and missed a lot of school, And to make things harder, his parents had a rocky marriage. They never divorced, possibly because of their religious beliefs. But the tension was always there. Even through all this, Lemmon knew he wanted to act. He got his first role at just 4 years old, when his dad put him in a play. By age 8, even while recovering from surgeries, he was hooked. One of his favorite early memories was being in a school play and forgetting his lines, but loving the laughter it brought. He said it wasn't about being funny, it was about feeling accepted. Lemmon's education took him from Rivers Country Day School to Phillips Andover, and finally to Harvard. At Andover, he proved he wasn't the sickly kid people remembered. He was athletic and funny. By his teens, he had taught himself piano and entertained his classmates with music and comedy. At Harvard, his father wanted him to study business, but Lemmon couldn't stay away from drama. He joined all the campus theater groups and even became president of the famous Hasty Pudding Club. His grades fell, and Harvard told him to stop acting. So, he started using fake names, like Timothy Orange, and kept performing in secret. He even wrote and starred in his own comedy shows under those aliases. Lemmon wasn't going to let anything stop him from being on stage. World War II interrupted everything. Lemmon joined the Navy in a special training program and was made an officer at just 20 years old. He served as a communications officer on an aircraft carrier, mostly away from direct combat. His service lasted less than a year, but it gave him a broader perspective. After the war, he went back to Harvard and finished his degree. Years later, he even rejoined the Navy as a reservist and served briefly in Vietnam, making training films. Most fans never knew that the actor who played so many light-hearted roles had a military past. In 1947, with his degree in hand, Lemmon moved to New York to chase his acting dream. He had just $300 borrowed from his father. His dad, although unsure, gave him his blessing with one important piece of advice. "When I stop finding romance in a loaf of bread, I'll quit." Lemmon struggled at first. He played piano and told jokes at a place called the Old Nick Music Hall. Sometimes he didn't even get paid, just a meal and whatever cash was left over on the weekends. But he kept going. He picked up odd jobs, performed in summer theater, worked in radio dramas, and slowly started getting TV roles. In 1949, he co-starred in a short-lived show with actress Cynthia Stone, who he later married. His big break came in 1953 when he got a role on Broadway in Room Service. That caught the eye of a talent scout from Columbia Pictures, and just a year later, he made his film debut opposite Judy Holliday. And from there, everything started to change. Jack Lemmon's big Hollywood break came with the film It Should Happen to You in 1954. But even before cameras rolled, his name almost cost him the role. The head of Columbia Pictures, Harry Cohn, didn't like the last name Lemmon. He feared critics would make puns if the film failed, and suggested Jack change it to Lennon. Jack shot the idea down immediately. He joked that if people thought of Lennon, they might mistake him for Lennon, which, during the tense McCarthy era, could be seen as un-American. Lemmon stuck to his name. It was a bold move, especially since, up until then, he'd mostly worked in live television. He had done over 400 performances, but didn't think movies were for actors like him. He believed films were for beautiful people, not for real actors. Still, he gave it a shot, and that chance paid off. 5 years later, Lemmon starred in a film that would change not only his career, but also movie history. In Some Like It Hot, 1959, he and Tony Curtis played musicians who dressed as women to escape gangsters. It was a daring comedy that pushed the limits of what was allowed in Hollywood at the time. The movie's huge success helped break down the old censorship rules. Crowds packed theaters across the country. In just 96 theaters during its first month, it made over $2.5 million, a massive number in 1959. Lemmon's performance was a hit with both audiences and critics. He won a Golden Globe, a British BAFTA award, and even got an Oscar nomination. Although he didn't win the Oscar that year, the film helped define his image as a top comedic actor. Decades later, it was honored by the Library of Congress as one of the most important films in American history. While Some Like It Hot made people laugh, another film showed Lemmon's dramatic range. In 1973, He starred in Save the Tiger, a much smaller movie with a much deeper message. He played Harry Stoner, a troubled businessman struggling during the Vietnam era. The film didn't make much money and nearly didn't get made at all. Studios didn't want a message movie, but Lemmon believed in the script so much that he fought for years to make it happen. He even agreed to work for a very small paycheck, just $165 a week, plus a share of the profits. The production had a tiny budget, so they shot it on location in Los Angeles using a new mobile film unit that helped cut costs. When the movie was finally released, critics praised Lemmon's performance. He went on to win the Oscar for Best Actor, making him the first person in history to win both a Best Supporting Actor and Best Actor award. It was a proud moment, even if the film itself didn't bring in big money. In 1982, Lemmon took another risk with Missing, a political drama based on a true story. He played Ed Horman, a father searching for his son who vanished during a coup in Chile. The movie never named the country, but its message was clear, and the government in Chile banned the film. Lemmon worked closely with the real Ed Horman to make sure the character felt honest, especially when it came to his Christian faith. One quiet scene stood out. Someone asks him what Christian Science is, and Lemmon's character simply says it's about faith. When asked, faith in what? He answers, in truth. That line captured the heart of the movie, and Lemmon's quiet power as an actor. A few years before Missing, Lemmon's life changed in another big way. He met Walter Matthau. In 1966, director Billy Wilder wanted Matthau to play the fast-talking lawyer in The Fortune Cookie. The studio wasn't sure. They wanted someone more famous, like Frank Sinatra or Jackie Gleason, but Wilder stood firm. Lemmon agreed, and the result was a perfect match. From the moment they shared the screen, their chemistry was magic. Lemmon played a kind, mild-mannered cameraman, while Matthau was his scheming brother-in-law. The film was a hit, and Matthau won an Oscar, even though production had to pause when he suffered a heart attack. When he returned, he'd lost 30 pounds, and costume designers had to hide his weight loss with big coats. Interestingly, Lemmon lost weight during filming too, 25 pounds, likely from stress or solidarity. The football scenes in the movie added another layer of realism. They filmed during an actual Cleveland Browns game, using real athletes and thousands of unaware fans as extras. Even when the Browns weren't available for reshoots, a college team stepped in to help. Lemmon and Matthau were opposites in every way. Lemmon was always polite, prepared, and precise. He knew the entire script before arriving on set. Matthau, on the other hand, was famously grumpy and unpredictable. He said whatever he wanted and didn't care who heard it. But those differences made their on-screen pairings unforgettable. Lemmon was compact and neatly dressed. Matthau was tall, rumpled, and had a deep, gravelly voice. Even their voices created comedy just by being so different. In 1968, they reunited for The Odd Couple. Though Matthau had already played Oscar on stage, Lemmon wasn't originally cast. Big names like Frank Sinatra and Dick Van Dyke were considered. But when the movie version came together, Lemmon took the role of the neat freak Felix. Matthau returned as the messy Oscar. Together, they became one of film's most iconic duos. The movie was a smash hit and launched a TV series and sequel. Their real friendship only added to the magic. In 1974, they teamed up again in The Front Page, this time playing fast-talking newspaper men. It was a darker, faster comedy than their earlier work. The movie didn't make as much money, but it showed a different side of their talent. Critics loved how they fired lines back and forth like machine guns. After some quiet years, they came roaring back in 1993 with Grumpy Old Men. The film wasn't supposed to be a big deal, just a light holiday release. But it became a huge hit. Lemmon and Matthau played two cranky neighbors fighting over the same woman. Audiences loved seeing them argue and prank each other. But underneath the jokes, the movie had a real message. It's never too late to live, to change, or to take a chance. A sequel followed in 1995, keeping their streak alive and winning over a whole new generation of fans. Their final film together came in 1998 with The Odd Couple 2. exactly 30 years after the original. The idea had been sitting in a drawer for years until the success of Grumpy Old Men brought it to life. They filmed across California and even used the same soundstage from the first movie. Sadly, the magic didn't fully return. Critics were harsh, and audiences weren't as excited. Still, watching Lemmon and Matthau promote the film was more entertaining than the movie itself. Off-screen, they were still the same. Lemmon sharp and tidy, Matthau wild and rumbling. Though the film didn't land, it closed the curtain on a partnership that had lasted over 3 decades. Walter Matthau started gambling when he was just a kid, growing up in the tenements of New York's Lower East Side. He once joked to his mother that he had been gambling since he was 6. She just hadn't known it. Even as a child, he was organizing rooftop card games called Bankers and Brokers, already drawn to the thrill of taking chances. His mother saw it for what it was, a dangerous obsession. She called gambling a terrible poison, and for Walter, it would be just that. The moment things got serious for him came on New Year's Day in 1950. He was in Miami with his friend, director Martin Ritt, and decided to bet $100 on a horse. The horse lost, and that was it. He was hooked. He joked later that this stunning success sealed the deal. From then on, gambling was part of his life. He bet on basketball games, horses, and couldn't walk by a craps table without trying his luck. But it wasn't just about money. For Matthau, gambling was about escaping. He said it shrunk the world down to a dot where nothing else mattered. Director Don Siegel once said Walter didn't even enjoy winning. The real thrill for him came from losing, and he lost a lot. Matthau estimated he had made about $50 million in his career and claimed most of it went to bookies. Some say he lost over $5 million in total. During the filming of Grumpier Old Men, Kevin Pollak mentioned liking the script. Matthau replied, "The script sucks, but I'm in debt for $2 million. It wasn't just a habit, it was a lifelong shadow." After he died, the back of his funeral program reportedly had his picks for the next week's horse races. That was Walter Matthau to the very end. Jack Lemmon faced his own demons, though his looked a little different. In 1962, he starred in Days of Wine and Roses as an alcoholic named Joe Clay. The performance was raw, emotional, and deeply personal. Decades later, Lemmon admitted on Inside the Actor's Studio that he had been battling alcoholism himself. During filming, both he and director Blake Edwards were drinking heavily. What audiences didn't know was that the film's heartbreaking portrayal of addiction wasn't just fiction, it was a mirror. In the movie, Lemmon's character starts as a successful PR man who drinks to fit in and cope, then slowly falls apart. There's a scene where he's strapped into a straitjacket, shaking and hallucinating from withdrawal. Lemmon's performance in that moment is almost too real to watch. Critics said it was terrifying in its honesty. One scene in particular stood out, when Joe lashes out at his wife in a desperate rage, hatred in his eyes, desperation in his voice. Lemmon was nominated for an Oscar for the role, but the impact went far beyond awards. After filming, Blake Edwards gave up drinking. Lemmon and his co-star, Lee Remick, eventually turned to Alcoholics Anonymous. The movie had shaken them, just as it had audiences. Lemmon later called the role one of the most important of his life, not just as an actor, but as a person. It was art that didn't just imitate life. It challenged it, changed it. As time went on, Matthau's health began to unravel. It started in 1966 with a heart attack during the filming of The Fortune Cookie. That led to bypass surgery in 1976. But his heart troubles never really went away. Things got worse in the 1990s. While filming Grumpy Old Men in freezing Minnesota temperatures, he came down with pneumonia. The doctors were shocked he survived. They told him his lungs were filled and they couldn't believe he was still breathing. To stay under the radar, he checked into the hospital under the name Max Goldman, his character in the film. In the years that followed, the problems piled up. Kidney failure, congestive heart disease, severe back pain, and even a tumor in his colon that had to be removed. By 1999, another bout of pneumonia landed him in the hospital for over 2 months. His body was failing. Lemmon visited him and was devastated by what he saw. Matthau, skin and bones, whispered that he didn't understand why they kept him alive. "Why don't they just let me go?" he asked, but even then, he kept joking. The sense of humor never left him. His last film was Hanging Up, released in 2000. He played a dying father opposite Diane Keaton, Meg Ryan, and Lisa Kudrow. The role mirrored his real-life condition. He was so sick during filming that he had to be hospitalized right after production ended. He had spent 5 decades in front of the camera, and now his final performance had become his real-life farewell. A year later, on July 1st, 2000, Matthau died of a massive heart attack. He was 79. He left behind his wife Carol, whom he had remarried after a divorce, and his son, Charles. With Mathau's passing, Hollywood lost not just a comic legend, but one half of a remarkable duo. Jack Lemmon didn't last much longer. Even as his health declined, he never lost his love for acting. In December 2000, just months before his death, he accepted a Lifetime Achievement Award by phone from his hospital bed. He had diverticulitis, but still found the strength to be part of the moment. A few months later, he underwent surgery again after catching pneumonia. What the public didn't know was that Lemmon had been quietly battling bladder cancer for 2 years. Still, he kept working. On June 27, 2001, Lemmon died at age 76, surrounded by family. He was buried in Westwood Village Memorial Park in Los Angeles. His gravestone reads, "Jack Lemmon in," as if he were starring in one final role.